In 2023, Slavic Magic posted a tweet soliciting help with the GUI for Manor Lords, saying that medieval stylization and the minimal interface is something very challenging, and yes, it absolutely is, but I'm going to give it the old college try. I'm Lucas Olivetti, creative director at Loreworx, a gaming startup, and in this series I look at upcoming games, and I'm going to say early access definitely qualifies, and I redesign their interfaces in hopes that a developer might watch this and make some of the changes. This is Manor Lords. Modern game UI is generally very minimal. The idea is to have the game itself do the talking. That's where the aesthetic truly lives. When the UI tries too hard to look a certain way, it runs the risk of getting in the way and hurting your experience. Because of this, it truly is a challenge, stylizing modern UI, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. I like to approach game UI design with the following mentality. If it's part of the game view, it needs to be minimal. But if it's a separate game screen, like an inventory screen that fills your game screen entirely, that's where you can go nuts. We add little details to the interface that's in the game view, whether it's the HUD, the tooltips, or pop-ups, and hope that the sum of those parts make a difference, but we go all out on separate game screens. And Manor Lords already gets most of this right. The game's UI is honestly pretty decent, especially from an experience perspective, which obviously is more important. That said, it falls into the Hollywood trope of portraying medieval times as drab and lifeless, which is ironic because the game world itself is realistically colorful. The citizens are wearing colorful clothes. They're not all covered in mud and horse poop, but the interface kinda is. Every game screen feels desaturated and lifeless, covered in an overlay of gray and brown, like it's been excavated or something. The game is Middle Ages, but the interface is Dark Ages. You see what I did there? Throughout this redesign, I'm going to do my best to breathe life back into this UI, starting with the policy screen. There are a few problems here. It's obviously very dark and brown like most of the UI. This default view is way too zoomed out, and while that has the benefit of showing you all the policies at the same time, it also covers the left and right side of the screen with dead space. This is obviously very placeholdery, but when I saw this, I started having ideas and I couldn't help myself, so here's the redesign. Now before I go into the details, let me start with a quick disclaimer. The medieval art you will see in this redesign video was generated with AI, and there likely are historical inaccuracies. I'm not an illustrator and I didn't want this video to take months. Artists can do much better than this. Anyway, the zoom level for this redesign would be locked. You can simply scroll or drag. And notice how there's no scroll bar. If you use a gradient on a list like this, masking the elements behind it, you tell players they can scroll without having to add a scroll bar. The original policy screen has 4 different rows representing 4 different policy levels. They're still here, but I integrated the Roman numerals into the grid and added a divider. To make the levels a little more distinct, I also changed the color of the card borders. And the 2 bottom levels with 3 cards each are now center aligned instead of left aligned like in the original design. Because most of the policies aren't in the game yet, I had to get creative with a lot of these cards. I also added a hide UI icon to the bottom right corner. Medieval art is cool, and players should be able to appreciate it. I would hate to hire an amazing illustrator to then hide his artwork behind a black overlay. Clicking on the icon would show you the art used in the background of the screen, which in this case shows a medieval town. Again, AI generated for the purposes of this video. The game already uses background art like this in the trade screen, though probably not AI generated. Now let's look at the development screen. This is Manor Lords tech tree. You can see that Slavic Magic went a little crazy here, which is freaking awesome. This artwork is incredible. The screen is a beauty, but do you see what I mean when I say the interface feels like it's been excavated? You see this beautiful piece of art, but it's covered in a haze. And once again, the game lets you zoom all the way out here, and we have the same problem as the original policy screen. The sides of the screen are now dead space. It's really drab. I also don't quite like how the game uses these modern looking arrows next to the name of your town. And there's this big rename button that's messing with the synergy of the entire screen because it pushes the town name to the left. Let me see what I can do. The biggest change here is in contrast and saturation. I wanted to breathe life into this artwork and remove that gray haze that it had, and nothing makes images pop more than contrast and saturation. It does come with some side effects though. When you increase contrast, you sometimes lose readability, and that's why I also added borders to detect that's unlockable. I really like that these dark lines light up as you unlock things, so that gave me an idea. What if they actually emitted light, lighting up the artwork behind it? I think that's what Slavic Magic is going for, but it's just not in early access yet. It seems logical to me and it looks cool. Like in the redesign policy screen, the zoom level here would also be locked, and I added a hide UI button that would remove all these icons in the top and bottom bars from this beautiful piece of art. And speaking of bars, I gave them a little shadow. This makes the change from middle screen to top and bottom bars less jarring. I replaced the modern looking arrows with the fleur-de-lis that the game already uses, and when you hover over them, they light up to better indicate that they're clickable. This makes up for being less intuitive than those modern looking arrows, and the game can also tutorialize this to make it even clearer. I also removed the rename button. There are other instances where things can be renamed in the game and no buttons are used. Instead, the mouse cursor changes to that classic Windows text editing bar thing. The same can be done here. If you like the redesign so far, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. You'll be helping us make our own game a reality, and we'll be forever freaking grateful. And do let me know in the comments if you have a game that you want me to look at. I do wish that this game had measurement helpers, right? So this is the road building function of the game. And you can see that the game is not telling me how long this road is going to be.
Oh, it's very big. It is long, not thick, but long.
Yeah, but dirty as well, because it's medieval. Because you can curve these streets, adding measurements here might be hard. But just a simple planning tool a la RimWorld would go a long way, I think, so we don't have to use buildings as guides.
If I was one of the commoners on the tents right there, I would be asking myself, what does he mean when the first thing he builds is a corpse pit? Should we be worried? Maybe go back to Essex or something.
One of the problems with this UI, which already is, I think, a really nice UI, but you can see that just in this little pop-up, you see that there are so many different styles of icons. It's these two arrows that are very modern looking and flat, but then you have already a plus sign and a minus sign that already looks more medieval. The bar itself is not centered inside of the circle. There's a lot of that going on in this UI. It was one developer for a long time, and honestly, he did a fabulous job with the interface. It's just that you could see that he was just trying to get the interface to a usable state rather than looking at it from the perspective of a UI designer, because UI designers are like pixel freaking perfect. He was not like that, and that's fine. One thing here that I don't like is these two icons here of Fernando. They actually represent families and not a single person.
They look like the icon you would get when you don't have a Facebook profile picture.
Exactly. It's the default profile picture. If you look at the top left of the screen, this is the family icon. It actually has 3 people.
I have a question. Did I give up my age talking about Facebook profile picture?
I'm gonna say no, because I'm older than you, and so if that happens to you, and so it's worse for me. When I'm playing these games, I always love it when the game makes the citizen not feel just like a number. Like the actual citizen has a life, has a name, has an age. That's why I tend to like colony managers more than I do city builders, because when it's a city, you're thinking, it's thousands of citizens, and it becomes a statistic. But you can see that there is a framework here for something that treats the citizens as not just a number, right? So if you click on people, you see the people that are assigned to do this job, but you can also click on the icon and you get taken to the person. You can actually rename the person, like, you can just call him Fernando if you want. He's felling a tree. That's really cool. One thing that it
used to be my job before editing for the channel.
Yeah, you chop wood. Such a man. But anyway, so you see that there is a framework here for something that is more in-depth that I think could be explored a bit more. And I don't know the roadmap for this game, but I hope that this gets taken to a more of an in-depth type of a feature. Like if you could pin like somebody that's your favorite or something, or you can put your friends in the game and then pin them and get notifications for when they do something like die or whatever. So there's something like that here, but one thing that I think that they could already do is these little icons that are just here to represent the sex of the person could actually just be like a portrait, because if you zoom in on them, you can see that they have a nice a face, and they're wearing some clothes. It would be easy, I think, well, not easy because you have to code this, you have to program this, but for the game to create little portraits, it would be so much cooler, similar to what your ruler is here on the top right of the screen, to actually have that be shown in these windows. Let me show you what I mean. Like I said, I think Slavic Magic has plans to add depth to these citizens, or they wouldn't have coded renaming citizens, telling you exactly what they're doing, and giving players a third-person mode so you can get up close and personal. I took screenshots from the citizens and I put them in here. But I also wanted to redesign the rest of this window. So I increased saturation and contrast to make it pop. I made the top bar a lot more blue and vibrant. I also fixed the icon inconsistencies inside this bar. The help icon had 2 circle borders that weren't centered. Now there's one. And the right side of the top bar was a mess, with the demolish button being a big circle like the help button, but with a single border instead of 2, the pin button not having its own circle, and the close window button being an X with its own thicker circle border inside a small circle. I mean, my OCD, man. Now for the elephant in the window. I replaced the building image with AI medieval art. The game already uses medieval art for army unit cards, and I think the same should be done with buildings, and I'll show you what I mean later. I offset the image to the left to leave room for the 2 building related UI elements, the upgrade button and the production drop-down panel. But I removed the plus sign from the upgrade button because a grayed out button or a lit up button already indicates when upgrading is available or not. So adding a plus sign is redundant. And while we're down here, let me try to add some color to the buttons on the bottom of the screen. Medieval stuff is colorful, and these buttons are not. They kind of remind me of medieval stained glass now. Kinda. In that tweet, he mentioned how it's very hard to stylize something and keep it minimal and then also keep it medieval. This is the type of situation where you could do this. You got a new message, and you can see that he started doing this. It's parchment paper and it's like a scroll, right? But here is the place where you don't need to use this font. This really modern font that you use all over the interface. This is where you can go freaking crazy. Change this font to make it more medieval cursive. You don't want to have medieval cursive all over the interface because that sucks for readability. People don't like cursive. I don't even know why they teach cursive anymore in schools and stuff, not in American schools. Some schools still do like cursive. So you can have, so it says signed and sealed by my own seal. Where's the seal? It's not here. So this is where you can go crazy. With these interfaces when it's modern like this. It's just screens that you don't see a lot. That's when you can be super creative. To redesign this, let me first take you to the diplomacy screen. Here's that same message template again. And here's the redesign. I wish I could take credit for this, but this is inspired by a cool Crusader Kings 3 mod that I use. I removed the drop paragraph here line and the quill icon from the letter to make it look cleaner. I think the quill is unnecessary and the instructions are better on the left side under the list of diplomacy options. I'm using a seal from Google Images here, but ideally the game would overlay your coat of arms emblem, the one you create when starting a new game, something Crusader Kings 3 also does. One other thing that's really cool that we need to get into here is animations. This game does it right for the most part. When it comes to interface animations, what I usually think of is if the player is going to see it a lot, it has to be quick. It needs to be less than half a second because otherwise I'm going to get really freaking annoyed by it. Every time you click on something, there is an animation, but it is so quick that you never really are bothered by it. And here's the icon inconsistency again. See, the only icon, the only yellow icon with a border is this market icon. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. And then if you look at the armament icons, they're all very different. Again, it's just because the interface has been taken to a place where it's good. And these are things that I'm assuming are going to be fixed in the polishing stage before the launch of, before the game is out of early access, obviously. We fast forwarded a bit here because I want to show the one animation that I have seen in this game that I think is really bad UX, and that is for the notification section on top of the screen. So when you load the game, the notification center gets cleared. However, as you're playing, it gets filled, and when you hover over it, you get this unnecessary animation that takes you from the top of the notifications list to the bottom of the list. This should not exist. It should always just take you to the last part of the last notification. There should be no animation here. And then if I want to, I can scroll up. That is the one animation that this game just takes it a bit too far when it comes to the animation stuff. Now here's the other place where I think you can go absolutely nuts, okay? This is the help screen, and I don't think it should be called help, first of all. I think it should be called Codex, because this is such a great opportunity for you to actually teach people about medieval times. When it's help, you're thinking, I'm not gonna click this stuff because I already have the tutorial tooltips and stuff like that. I already know how to play the game. Why would I click help? Make it Codex so people actually open this thing and learn about medieval stuff. So again, perfect opportunity for you to go absolutely nuts with the medieval stuff here. Similar to like the Codex in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's such a beautiful screen with medieval artwork and stuff like that. Same thing can be done here. This is where you go crazy. I want to adjust a few more things. The top bar, the construction menu, and the construction tooltips. Let's start with the top bar. I think it looks pretty good. I'm just going to tweak it. See, when I first looked at it, I was confused. Why are the icons on the right colored and 3D looking, except for this fuel icon? But the ones on the left are flat and monochrome, except for the last two. And I think I know why now. The icons on the left are meant to be attention grabbing. They're more vital than the icons on the right. They become green when things are going well, or red when shit's about to hit the fan. Well, at least this one does. The others, not so much. Though as you can see, the number does change color. I think the icons should too. As for the last two icons on the left, they puzzled me. I really didn't like them at first because it screws with the synergy here. But I couldn't think of two better icons that were flat like the others. So I thought of a way to make them work. The left side of the top bar uses these little diamonds to separate things. And I don't think separating all of these indicators using them is necessary. It just pollutes the bar in my opinion. But we can use one to create a better separation for the two colored icons on the bar. You'll be micromanaging these numbers a lot, especially in the early game, so they deserve the focus. And with a separation, they no longer bother me. And like with every other redesign, I added contrast. Now the construction menu. I think the building cards look fine, but they all look the same to me. Most are just the outer walls of a bunch of medieval buildings, and if it wasn't for the resource icons below them or their tooltips, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I think these building cards should be medieval art, like the militia unit cards, but not art of the outer walls. They should represent the building, but the player should be able to tell what the building is by looking at the illustration. Kind of like this. Now let's redesign the tooltips. These tooltips really look like they've been recently excavated, just very, very muddy. You can see the artsy medieval frame that they have, but you can barely tell that they're red and green. So again, I boosted the contrast and the saturation, then I retraced the red and green art to make it more colorful. I added the building illustration to the tooltip and replaced the fuel icon with something more similar to the other game icons. Game is already a great game. It's already, and honestly, I don't think people are bothered by the stuff that I just talked about with the UI. But again,
is bothered about nerdy stuff. Just
yes, it's a trained eye. Okay,
you got goosebumps from Kingdom Come UI.
I did,
and it's true. If you go to the video, you will see.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes. If you like this video, then watch this other video because YouTube really thinks you're gonna love it. And as always, remember that fun is business. And Fernando?
Don't give drinks to the horse. That's That's how we're gonna.
Don't ride a drunken horse.
Yes.